Hey, babe. Yeah, I got time to talk. How to remove rust from your knife. Step 1, don't panic. Calm down. Everything is okay. A little rust on your knife is no big deal, and it can be very quickly and easily removed from your knife. We're also going to show you some techniques today on how to remove more substantial rust from your knife. Maybe you left it in a drawer for a couple days, forgot about it, maybe a week or two, and the rust is really on there. So we'll start with some techniques that involve tools or items that you likely have around your house already, and then we'll move into some techniques that are a little more advanced, for lack of a better term. And these techniques will involve tools or items that you either have to make from other items in your house or your existing sharpening kit, or items that you'll have to go out and purchase. Chances are you'll get better results with these techniques and you'll be better able to handle more substantial rust. But again, you'll have to spend a little more time and money to achieve these results. So without further ado, let's start with the easiest technique of all, which is going to be just your damp cloth here. Chances are, if you've caught the rust early enough, maybe you were prepping and you stepped away for 2 seconds, you've come back and there's rust on your knife. With a little elbow grease with your damp towel, chances are you'll be able to just wipe that away super easy. Don't be afraid to lay the knife right down on the table and really give a little elbow grease there. You'd be surprised at how effective just a damp towel can be at removing very minor rust from your knife. The next technique we're going to use is something you'll likely have around your house already as well, which is just a Scotch-Brite scouring pad here. These guys have, or I guess it's not a scouring pad, but a sponge with a scouring pad on one side. These guys, again, have a finer side and a coarser side. We'll start by using the finer side, see how that does us. Again, very similarly to when we were using the damp towel, we'll get this right down on the table, nice and flat so we don't cut ourselves as we're scrubbing, and we'll really just kind of give her and see how much we can remove with the finer side of the Scotch-Brite before flipping over and using the coarser side if the need arises. Chances are, if your damp towel did not work for you, then the finer side of your sponge is probably not going to do much better, so you'll end up having to use the coarser scouring pad side. It's important to note with all of the techniques that we're using today, it's in your best interest to use nice long strokes all in one direction. All of these techniques are slightly abrasive, so they are going to leave like very minor scratches on your knife. But as long as you're using like nice long strokes, chances are those scratches will be less noticeable. With these techniques that we're going to talk to you about in the later stages of this video, we're going to achieve a really nice scratch pattern on our knife, nice polish on our knife, and that's why those techniques are a little bit better to use than the ones that we've talked about so far. Jake made a great point here about your scouring pad. Some of the old ones that are kind of soft, if you have one of those and a brand new one, we would highly recommend starting with this slightly softened up one. If you have a brand new one, you could probably soften it up in the sink a little bit, just scrub some stuff with it, because those brand new Scotch-Brites are actually quite abrasive and they're going to leave some pretty deep scratches in your knife, so be cautious with those. Next technique is the aptly named rust eraser. This is not one that we carry in our store, but it will get the point across. Very similar to a pencil eraser that removes pencil from paper. These rust erasers will remove rust from the steel of your knife. Again, like we've been doing with all the other techniques, you're just going to lay the knife totally flat down to the surface so we don't cut ourselves. And we're going to use nice long strokes all in one direction to scrub away this rust. You want to dip your rust eraser in a little bit of water and get your blade slightly wet before you start, and this will help get a better polish on your knife as you're removing the rust. A little note about hand pressure when we're getting into the more aggressive abrasives here. When you apply a lot of pressure with one of these rust erasers, you're going to be really creating some deep scratches in your knife. So it's important in our mind to use lighter pressure with more passes than heavier pressure with less passes, if that makes sense. So by using a lighter pressure, you'll be able to get more even polish on your knife, and one that's not going to have such deep scratches in it. It's also important to note that not all rust erasers are the same. This guy is made from Naniwa and it's quite coarse. I would put it in the I don't know, maybe like 200-300 grit range. And then the ones that we actually carry at our store are made by Suihiro, and they're probably more in like the 500, maybe even up to like the 800, somewhere between there grit range. So those Suihiro are obviously going to not remove rust as substantial, but will not scratch your knife as much. Our next technique is going to be baking soda. This is a great one because most people have this lying around their house. You may have it in your fridge to help cut down on odor. I know I do. The baking soda is great because it's going to do two things for us. It's actually an abrasive, so that abrasive is going to, of course, help us scrub away any rust. And when mixed with water, it creates an alkaline solution, which is also going to help dissolve the rust, which will make it easier to scrub away as well. When you're using baking soda, you want to get your knife slightly damp, and you want to be quite liberal with the baking soda as you sprinkle it over your knife. Chances are you'll only be able to do one side at a time, and you're going to let the baking soda sit on there for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. Doesn't have to be a super long time. You want to have enough baking soda on there that you still have like little pockets of it on your knife. You don't want it to completely dissolve away. And then with a damp paper towel, we're just going to use that baking soda to gently scrub our knife, dissolving and polishing away the rust at the same time. Again, using nice long strokes in one direction so as not to create a messy scratch pattern on your blade. The next item for rust removal we're going to talk about is this steel wool. Now it's important to note that the steel wool we're using for this video is quadruple O steel wool, meaning it is very, very fine. If you have a steel wool under your sink right now that you're using to scrub dirty dishes, that guy's likely far too coarse for our purposes today. You can get this stuff on Amazon or at Home Depot. Chances are you're not going to find it at like the grocery store or anything like that. So again, quadruple O or double O steel wool is what we're going to be using. Now we're getting into the realm of like medium to aggressive rust removal here. This steel wool is going to be able to handle some pretty aggressive rust. Of course, if you use the double O, even more rust removal power. And for the ultimate rust removal power, you can use your steel wool in combination with some baking soda. Working backwards a little bit here, you could also combine some baking soda with a towel or with a scouring pad for extra rust removal power. Similarly to the other techniques we've used so far, when using the steel wool, you want to concentrate on using long strokes and a moderate to light hand pressure. Again, the more abrasive the tool or item that we are using to remove rust from our knife, the more gentle we should be because we don't want to be creating unnecessarily deep scratch marks. Of course, if your knife is very rusty, you will have to adjust your hand pressure depending. But general rule of thumb is you want to be as light with your pressure as you possibly can while still doing enough to remove the rust. Again, if you want to use baking soda along with your steel wool, much like we've used it before, you're just going to dampen your knife a little bit and dust some baking soda on there. Rather than using a paper towel, you're going to use your Scotch-Brite. This again is going to help sort of dissolve some of the rust in addition to adding extra abrasive to your Scotch-Brite or to your steel wool if necessary. For our bonus round, we're going to be doing sandpaper. Sandpaper is not always highly recommended in our books because it can be very difficult to work with. Sometimes there's no other option though. Maybe you've watched some of those restoration videos on YouTube, I'm sure you have, where they found like a knife at the bottom of the ocean and they have to like grind down the knife. This video is a rust removal video, so we're not going to go too much into like the different, like how to achieve a nice finish and stuff like that. But at that point, you're almost getting into like completely re-grinding your knife. And again, it can be very difficult to get a really nice finish using sandpaper, and there are other and easier, better ways to do it. So that's going to lead us perfectly into our next technique, which is going to be using the mud from our stones and finger stones. The final technique, and the one that we most highly recommend here at Sharp, is going to be using finger stones, or the mud from your stones. Now, we have a couple here, this guy in the 220 grit range, this guy here in the 700 grit range. As you can probably tell, they're just like little bits of old stones that we've had lying around the shop that we smash up and kind of round off and use for finishing. Now, you can use just the stone on the knife to gently scrub, but you can also take an Atoma or even a mortar and pestle and grind this up into like a mud. So you're gonna mix a little bit of water and grind this up, and you'll have basically like a liquid abrasive, very similar to the baking soda that we have here. And you're gonna use that along with like a damp towel or a paper towel, or even if you have one of those fine mesh little pads, and you're gonna use that mud that you've created to scrub the knife and remove any rust. Now, the reason we recommend this method the most is because it's the easiest way to get different grits into your sort of rust removal process here. So again, we've got a 320 here, we've got a 700, and you could even smash up like a 1000 grit stone or up into like the finer grit stones like 8000. The boys at the shop love using the mud off of a natural stone. They collect that and use that to polish knives with. Now, this is going to give you the nicest, cleanest, most consistent finish. We find it the easiest way to remove rust and leave a nice finish on the knife after the fact as well. You can almost get like a Kasumi finish on your knife, and we're not going to talk too much about that, because in our next video we're going to be showing you how to create a really nice finish on your knife. But the method that we most highly recommend is the finger stones and the mud from the stones. Now, if you don't have any old stones lying around and you're not willing to break up any of the stones that you have currently, easy way around this is just to kick up a little slurry on your stone. So with your flattening tool, your Atoma, if you have one, you're going to just develop a nice slurry on your stone and collect all of that slurry into like a little Tupperware, and then you can use that to scrub your knife. It should be noted that you should start with the finest stone that you have and work your way down. You don't want to be unnecessarily creating deep scratches in your knife if you don't have to. So start at the highest grit that you have. Maybe that's a 3000, 5000, whatever you've got. Scrub your knife a little bit with that and see how it does. If it's not working super well, then you can go down to your next lowest grit, kick up a slurry with that guy and scrub away with that and see how it does for you. Of course, if you go all the way down to 220, if you want to get a really nice finish, you should work your way all the way back up to the highest stone that you have to get the nicest finish that you can achieve. Well, there you have it, guys. How to remove rust from your knife. I hope you learned some stuff today. Stay tuned to Sharp Knife Shop's YouTube channel. We're working on a finishing video, one in which we are going to show you how to better control all the variables that we've discussed in today's video and show you how to get a really, really nice finish on your knife. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. And until the next one, stay sharp.